welcome to my channel, Teresa's Crafty Cabana. I made some jelly prints recently that looked like beach scenes, and so I wanted to make them into cards. So I'm just showing you what I did. This is a little short that I kind of made that showed how I made these. So I used bubbles and I let the bubbles dry, and then I put some alcohol ink on them and brayered them out, and then I was able to get a really cool looking background, and I put some sand, and to make texture I used a sponge. I got 3 different prints, and then I made a few other prints as well. If you want to watch the video, I will link it. Anyway, so that's how I made these jelly print backgrounds, and this one had some sparkle in it. This was the one that had like glitter on this particular one. And I just found a font on Dafont, and I found 2 different fonts. I just typed in beach and just went through until I saw a couple that I liked. And I used the 2 different fonts to spell out beach, please, and I cut them out on my Silhouette Cameo. And then I went ahead and kept the inside pieces because I'm going to piece them back in once I put them on my card here. This is a tan colored cardstock, and I'm just using some vintage photo distress oxide ink just to give it a little bit of more of a sand color. I used an alcohol ink marker to make some dots in the sand, and then I had this extra piece that I ripped off the bottom of the Beach Please jelly print. So I went ahead and kind of tore it up some more. I wanted to make waves, like the foamy part of the waves, so I'm kind of playing around with how that would look, and I thought it would look cool if I could layer these. So I'm just kind of shaping them, and I think the ripped or the torn look just makes it look more like the foam coming out of a beach wave. So here I'm just seeing if they look like they would layer up nicely, and I think they do. So then I wanted to make a little design on my card. I went to SVGCuts. I'd already had this file, but this is Mary who makes all these files. She makes some really, really cute things. And I used the pelican from this Tropical Friend set. And it's just 3 parts. So the brown part, which I cut out in beige, and then the white for the head, and then the orange part is for the beak and the feet. I went ahead and used the same vintage photo distress oxide ink to color in the wing of the pelican, and I'll use that same color to do the body of the pelican. Now the body of the pelican I wanted a little bit darker than the wing, so I did go with a little heavier amount of ink on this body part, and I'm not worried about getting it on the beak and the feet because I'm going to be putting the orange over the top of it. This little skinny part is the top part of the beak. The orange part is the bottom part, and they kind of get glued together. So I used a little bit of the brown on the orange part of the beak to tie it together, and I added some to the feet as well. For the head, I used this Hickory Smoke Distress ink. I used foam on the wing, and then the rest I glued flat. The head is really cute. Kind of looks like a whipped cream top to his little head. They glue together really easily, and they fit perfectly like a puzzle piece. The eyeballs don't come in the SVG file, so I just referenced the photo that she has in the SVG file, and I saw where she put her dot, so I just added a black dot for the eyeball, and I think it looks cute. Then I went in with the foam again to make some more of these layered waves. The foam I wanted so that they would kind of separate from each other and not lay directly on top of each other. That gives it a natural looking shadow. Then I just put glue on those because they were already raised up. Now I can press it down evenly. And it makes a really pretty beach scene. I like how this looks. I did take those inside pieces for the letters and I just did a little bit of glue and then just took my tweezers and put those little pieces on. I've used my Stickles glue to add a little bit of glitter to the waves. Stickles does take a little while to dry, so I did have to be careful not to touch it. I put my pelican on the front of this, like he was sitting in the sand, and I popped up his feet as well. And then I used a little bit of the brown to make it look like he has a shadow. Now, Beach Please was getting a little bit lost, so I decided to just use that same brown and just draw around each of the letters, or draw inside of them, just to make them a little bit more noticeable. And that looks better to me because it stands out more and I can read it better. So then on the inside, I used some spare pieces that I cut away, and I used this scalloped edge scissor, decorative edge scissors, and then I used a thin line of the blue that was left over, just making it look like there's a wave or some water on the blue. And this was helpful because inside of my card where I put the shadow for the pelican, you could see the brown showed through, because alcohol ink markers, they will bleed through. So this will cover up that whole area. There's that little mark. And so once I cover that, then you won't be able to see it. Again, I had to be careful putting this on because the Stickles was on the other side. So I had to make sure not to touch any of the Stickles. It was still very wet. All right, and that finishes off this card. And I think that gives it a nice white spot to write on as well. Stands nicely. And then I realized the waves didn't have any shadow, so I just colored in a little bit of a shadow. Next, I cut out some, these are also part of that SVG set, the Tropical Friends, and I cut out these leaves, but they didn't cut out all the way. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, if you have a cutting machine and the pressure wasn't quite enough, so I just went ahead and left it as a background and kind of inked around the leaves, and I'm going to use that to make my background area. So I cut that down, and then I took some kind of greenish blue colors and just colored in each of the leaves. You could see some of them popped out a little and then some of them did not at all, so this was kind of my way of working around something that I would have probably thrown away if I didn't figure out how to use it, because I wasn't going to sit and fussy cut out each one of these leaves at this point. It was just going to take too long, so I colored them instead. And I have the other side of that tan paper, and I'm just layering it on top of that. And I like how this is looking. It's looking very tropical. I cut out a seagull from that same little SVG set. I'm using the hickory smoke on the white of his body. And then I'll use the black soot on his wing, and I had cut that one out of gray cardstock. And his feet and beak his whole body was cut out of an orange base, so I didn't have to glue those on. Very, very simple. That's what I love about Mary's files. She makes them very easy to put together. I added the eyeball, and then this was another part of that set. It says Paradise, and here I'm just inking up I had a light pink and I wanted it to be a little more of a bold pink, so I added picked raspberry distress oxide ink, and then Spice Marmalade. I used that to give some shadow to my orange. I went in with a little bit of seedless preserves just around the flower. And then I have this Gelli roll pen that does like a glitter. So I just went around each of the letters with this glitter pen. I also went ahead and went around the flower. So it adds a nice shine. I cut out some of the flowers that were in the set and I resized them so that they were different sizes. And then I just picked some bright colors and I just inked them up. And these I had cut out of white cardstock. And so I'm just using the Distress Oxide inks to give them some color. And then here, it's just kind of sped up my process. So when I'm making a card, I kind of pick out all my elements, but then I have to figure out how I want to put them together, what looks right. So I had found a piece of vellum just in my extra paper stash, and I thought that would be a nice little area because the word beach was getting lost on the green, so the vellum really helped it stand out a little bit more. So I just put the whole title on the vellum and I ripped it to make it look like water, again waves. And then I just kind of followed the shape of the waves and put the word beach on. And I'll let that dry. And then I have just another alcohol marker. This is yellow, and I'm just gonna go into each of these little stamen pieces. This is the deep yellow, but it does look like an orange to me. I had to look at it again to make sure I picked yellow. It does lighten a little and look more like yellow once it's dry. I took more of the glitter pen and just went around each of these flowers and just did some dots in the stamen and then glued them all down. It's looking very bright and happy. I like the colors. I put the foam tape just behind the words, trying to hide it just because vellum will show through. I had the foam a little bit too high on the A and the H, so I did pull those back up and I was able to kind of shrink them down a little bit by cutting them a little bit smaller. I added my seagull, and that one I also used the foam squares or foam tape. So here I trimmed down the beach foam tape just a little bit so that it was a little bit better, and then once it flipped out of my hand I realized I had cut my pelican out of the other half of this, so I just cut that part off, folded another 8.5 by 11, cut down to 5.5 by 8.5. Then I folded it, made myself an A2 card base, and glued it all on top of there. And that's how you fix that. Then I still had some more of the leftover jelly print, so I used that to make my inside of this card. I used the scalloped edge again, but I cut it where there was a lighter blue and a darker blue, and I used my inks to make it a little more prominent. I layered them on top of each other with foam tape, cut away the extra, and now that completes my 2 cards. So these are, I actually only used 1 jelly print for these 2 cards because beach was basically just taken out of the first one. So this was my really fun. I had so much fun picking out the colors for this. I really wanted happy, fun colors. For the inside of this one, I did use a little bit of my blue to make it look like it was kind of like spraying. And then I think it just looks like a very tropical-y card. And then for my other one, I have this white space where I can write on, and that looks nice and clean. And this one definitely has a fun beach feel to it. The beach please almost gives me the vibes of like drawing in the sand. So I thought that was a really fun card to put together, and I'm just ready for summertime now. So hope you enjoyed watching and hope you're having a great weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for being here. Happy crafting.